Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story this collection is from Wonderful-B, 8980. AITA for cutting ties with my parents. Because they support my brother, my daughter. I come from a big family. Me, 35F, and all my siblings, 3 brothers and 2 sisters, are close, love and support each other deeply. Relationship with parents has been active. I see them often. I have 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. My family has been involved heavily in my kids' lives from the beginning. It isn't uncommon for a sibling to take my older 2 kids for an outing, or even for a weekend. They'll do things like skating, surfing, rock climbing, hiking, trail running, camping, biking, etc. It's been really amazing to have my siblings be so involved with my kids. Things really crashed down almost 3 months ago when one of my children told me that my brother, her uncle, 37M, abused her on an outing. I'm not going into detail, but it was severe. She told me not long after it happened. I called the police and pressed charges. It was a stressful investigation. He was arrested, and we are going through a criminal court process. I told my sisters and one of my brothers the same day I made the initial report to police, but I kept it a secret from my parents because I didn't want to risk the offender being tipped off. That first month was emotional hell for me. I went through many conflicting emotions. I started off with rage, but I eventually fell into pleading for it to not be true and mourning this person I thought I knew. Even asking myself, is there a possibility that he has some kind of brain tumor? This isn't the person I know. But I will say that though I was going through an internal emotional roller coaster, I never lost sight of my action plan. I was very focused on the investigation. I mean, my actions were a stark contrast of what I was feeling. When it came to an action plan, I was a machine, and I set the stage for an arrest to be made. Although the arrest was my goal, it was still devastating for me. I had a breakdown that day. I got the call that he was arrested. I had a panic attack. Even though what he did was heinous, I still struggled with imagining him in jail and scared, knowing he just lost everyone and everything. Seeing his name, stats, and charges on the county jail record online was a step further into making it real. It took a little while for my emotions to match 100% with my action plan. I'm so glad that my emotional feelings now match the goal I've been pursuing. I have mostly, if not fully, processed that my brother is a monster, and I no longer have any lingering affection for him. As soon as I got the call from the detective that he had been picked up and on the way to the jail, I went straight to my parents to tell them before my brother or his GF could call them. They believed my daughter immediately, and understandably were broken-hearted about their son. They are so hurt for their grandchild. However, they've made it clear they will not leave their son, saying, "I cannot abandon any of my children. I just don't have it in me." The morning after the arrest, they bailed him out of jail and then got him an attorney so he would have better defense than a public defender. It's been about 7 weeks since the arrest. Since then, they have kept out of the court process and don't talk about it. They don't even want to think about it. I've been trying to understand their point of view. He is their child too. I've gone through my own process of screaming and crying how he could do this to me, to my child. It was incredibly hard to picture this person I loved and trusted my whole life as being this monster. I get it. I understand how hard it has to be for my parents to fully accept this reality. The offender has war-related PTSD and depression, and he discontinued psych meds abruptly. He is claiming this is what caused his behavior. I looked into these meds and asked several mental health professionals about this claim. My takeaway is that it was BS. My parents, on the other hand, are buying into it, that this is a mental illness and not his fault. They're in denial. My siblings and their children have easily but painfully decided to cut the perp out of their life, so I don't have any worries there. Their support solely lies on my daughter and I, and what I need to do. The first thing I said to my sisters when they answered my video call was, "Please don't leave me," because I really didn't know who could stand by my side as I prosecuted our brother. And all of my siblings have stood by my side through every step. I don't think I would have succeeded without their support, help, advice. However, my parents have made it clear they are not cutting him out of their life. They think they can somehow support both of their children through this. They're old, lonely, and I acknowledge they're suffering, their family falling apart. I know the emotional toll this is taking on them, and maybe having to handle emotions so deep at their age is too much. They have told me that I did the right thing and that I did what I had to do. They say they support me, and they are so torn up about what my daughter suffered. They keep saying, "What happened to him? What happened to him to be like this?" They're having a hard time, and it's really a devastation for everyone. My mom told me she is depressed. My parents look like they've aged so much in the past few weeks. To be honest, I was terrified that they would have heart attacks when I told them what was happening. I was mentally preparing to have to plan funerals while pursuing a conviction. My parents aren't perfect, but they've always supported me. I was a teen mom. They helped with childcare so I could go through school and work. My kids are bonded to them. I seem to be the only person seriously considering dropping them. I don't want to cut my parents out in their last years and take that away from my children, but I can't stand the idea of being connected to anyone who remains connected to that monster. Even the victim wants to see her grandparents knowing they won't abandon their son. She doesn't like that they won't cut him out, but she said she is okay to keep seeing her grandparents. Am I even the slightest bit wrong in cutting them out, even if it means severing it for my kids too? Is it awful to abandon your elderly parents? I've been raised with a strong duty to family mindset, that you take care of your parents as they age. Everyone in my life says they don't know. They understand both my feelings and my parents' limitations. Would it be better to give them an ultimatum, me and my family, or him? I'm so scared if I add any more to the stress on them, it will really kill them. If the victim wants to stay connected to them, should I suck it up and continue with the contact? At what point am I being selfish and unreasonable against everyone else's feelings? Just wanted to add that my primary focus is about my daughter. I'm not mentioning her really because my question isn't about her, and her condition isn't up for discussion. I don't want the offender or his supporting fiancé to read things about how my child is doing or what is going on with my family at home, considering the active case. By the way, my brother's fiancé is the only person who called my daughter a liar, stating that I would have some indication that he was like this. There would be red flags. This comes from a girl who was raised by a therapist, and she called my daughter a liar even after I told her that there was a recorded confession. There's no question about it. Disgusting. Just be assured that everything is being handled at home for the victim. My husband and I got her. My family is suffering, but we are strong. There's no confusion about that, and what needs to be done. We are fighting like hell for justice, even if I'm screaming and dying inside the whole way. My confusion is only about cutting my parents out of my family's life for maintaining contact with the offender. And believe me, he is guilty. I don't even need a conviction to know it. My parents also know he is guilty. OP is not an AH. Rather, her parents are AH who are supporting their criminal son. It is really insane to have such selfish parents. They are morally perverted and bad people, both for the family and society. They are supporting a heinous crime just because it was committed by their son. As for scores, I would rate OP's criminal brother 5 and OP's parents 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from Nebular Reptile. AITA for getting mad at my boyfriend for not wanting a full-time job? Hello everyone. This is going to be a lot, but thank you to all who read. My 25F 24M boyfriend of 5 years lost his dad in surgery about 2 years ago. We both currently live with his 47F mom. Before then, he hasn't really been one to hold down a steady job. He really dislikes working for others, and so then has always done things like Uber Eats or last-mile delivery services since then with my car. During that time, he has used my vehicle for a majority of the time, adding about 30 to 40k miles to it in about 2 years. The thought about the wear and tear on my car makes my stomach churn, but I try not to think about it. Anyway, he has acquired his CDL and passed the class this year. Although he feels like he didn't get enough class time, he has looked for jobs but hasn't been able to find any. This is the part that I have a hard time with. He is rather picky and has told me that he only applies for jobs that he considers are worthwhile pay and only local. Mind you, he has zero experience to show for it. I beg and beg for him to apply for regional at the minimum, although I don't understand why he wouldn't apply for national, because we have no kids and no other obligations that would need him to stay here. The pay is much better, but I digress. He says he can't picture himself working and living in a truck with someone else, and that he'd rarely be home to enjoy that pay. Also, he worries about his mom and doesn't want to leave her alone. Okay, fine. Half a year has passed since he's acquired his CDL, and there's still no news. He'll go to interviews, but won't call for a follow-up. Everything came to a head this past week. My mum was able to purchase a house and had plans to rent it out. However, she has extended this opportunity to us and gave us a chance to move out of his mum's and into that house. We would only be responsible for a fraction of the rent utilities. I spoke to him seriously about it, expressing how important it is for us to be adults now. Once I brought up that he'd need to work full-time, his eyes almost popped out of his head. He genuinely thought we would be able to slide by on him being part-time, although I was going to work full-time. He genuinely didn't expect me to expect the same from him. He then decided to tell me his plans about starting a YouTube channel with his buddy, and that when it starts making revenue, he will quit his job. I lost it there and started crying and telling him that it's so far-fetched, and I hate how he's banking on the fact that this will take off, that it's a great dream to have, but realistically not possible. I called him delusional, and I told him I don't believe at all that it's going to happen, so that he needs to get that idea out of his head and start acting like an adult and coming to terms with working a full-time job. He got mad at me because I didn't believe in him, and that he can't believe I would say such things. At the end of it, he said that he's willing to work full-time, but again, if this takes off, he will quit. If not, he will work full-time. But I'm afraid the damage is done. I think I realized then that I was dating a man-child and that I can't see him in the same light anymore. I asked for a break there and asked for him to secure a job before I can go any further. He cried and begged for me to wait for an interview that's coming up and for me to stay. I'm also partly fed up because he has promised me marriage, but hasn't saved any money for a ring. The thing is though, he treats me so amazingly, and like I'm the princess of his whole world. He has always been very sweet, and anything that I would want or need, he finds a way to get it for me. He's the most patient man I've ever met, and he makes me feel so loved. I don't know if I'm being impatient or not understanding. He tells me that ever since he lost his dad, he has had a lack of motivation, but he doesn't believe in therapy. He has had them before his dad passed, and he found the experience awkward. Seems interested in group talk/therapy, but won't take the steps to join one. At the end of the day, I just want him to grow up and start adulting, but I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. OP is not an AH for wanting her boyfriend to take responsibilities and contribute to their shared future. Not OP, but OP's boyfriend is an AH for living in the paradise of fools and relying on unrealistic plans and making no efforts for his future. As for scores, I would rate OP's boyfriend 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Lilid Bol. AITA for screaming at my 34F parents, 63M and 62F, for something that happened 20 years ago? I am the middle child of 3. Anna, 41F, Adrian, 28M, and me, Alicia, 34F. All fake names. My oldest sister is currently battling cancer, and she won't make it. The doctors have been clear that she is in her last months. I am her primary caregiver. I take her to appointments, to palliative care, checks, everything. I also deal with her mood swings and withdrawals, the physical assistance she needs, curing her wounds, all the drill. She has 2 kids, 13M, 10F, that have been raised by my parents, 63M and 62F, as her boyfriend, 36M, never really wanted to take care of the kids. So when they were 1 year old, she just dropped them at my parents' place one day and never took them back. She sees them regularly though. My brother Adrian, on the other hand, lives with the girlfriend in our hometown. I am generally helping them with anything, sometimes even paying vet bills if they're short on cash. I am also the mother of a 3M child, and we live with my partner, 45M, and my stepson, 16M. I WFH full-time, and also do 90% of the house chores as my partner works out of town, so his working and travel hours are long. We live in a medium-sized town, and although the place has all basic services, the university is in the capital. around 100 kilometers away. So if you want to pursue high studies, you need to move either there or somewhere farther. Anna had the opportunity to move there for studies when she was 18, but a couple years later she decided to drop off and came back to our hometown. She has been living here since then. I, on the other hand, despite having a score of 8.6 out of 10 when I finished high school, could not attend university because back in the day my parents were not in good economic terms and we didn't have the means. I decided to take professional formation and I did web development. I also took online university education, and I am just one course away from being a certified practitioner for infant speech. Overall, I did study, and with good results, even if I couldn't make it to university. I am working on the IT field, and it goes fairly good to me. My brother did start his PF education, but did not finish it. He works harvesting the fields nowadays, as we live in a rural area, and that's the type of work you can access to if you are not a qualified professional. On Sunday, I was visiting my parents when we were just generally speaking about studies and the past. My dad suddenly spilled that they did in fact have the money to send me to university 20 years ago, but that they didn't think I would make it. The reason? My sister Anna dropped off and quoting him, "She was a very smart child, so if she couldn't, there was no way you could." My entire past shattered to pieces. I had always made peace with not having a higher education because my family simply couldn't afford it. Just to learn 20 years later that they could, they just didn't think I deserved the chance. Their excuse was that I had to study a lot to go through high school, so I wouldn't last at university. The reason I studied a lot was because I wanted to secure a vacancy in a high-demand career on my preferred university, hence my 8.6 out of 10 final score. They shut down this by restating that Anna and Adrian had always been the smart children, not me. I left their house shortly after when things had heated up, and I was literally screaming at them. When I made it home, I told my partner, 45M, and also that I was not going back to visit them until they at least call me first. I didn't even expect an apology, but they to reach out. He said I was overreacting, as it is something that happened 20 years ago, and I should let the past go. Now I am doubting myself. For me, this happened on Sunday, not 20 years ago. And it is very painful to know how my parents think about me, especially when I have thrived on my field, and I am also taking care of the family all the time. But I don't know. Am I the for how I reacted and what I expect on this situation, or are my feelings justified? OP is 100% justified for her frustration. However, screaming is not a solution. It is not only about just the past. OP's parents' choices are affecting OP life till now. As for scores, I would rate OP's parents 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the scale. Let's now move on to the next story from original_wall_A by _779. AITA for reminding my stepsister that she is not my father's daughter. I am a woman, and I am 28 years old, so I left my parents' house long time ago. I have my own house, a job and a fiancé to whom I officially got engaged 3 months ago. My parents divorced when I was 16, but they have maintained civil contact, and I have good relationships with both of them. My father gets with a woman 5 years ago who already had a daughter. She is now 22. My mother gets with a man 7 years ago, and he have 2 sons, 16 and 19 now. I get along pretty well with my stepbrothers, and have always tried to involve them in activities with me, going to the shops, playing video games or board games together, or even just taking them out for a meal. They are good kids, and I enjoy their company, so I tried to bond with them, and luckily everything is good between us. I tried to do the same with my stepsister, but things never went very well. From what I know, she has had several problems since her father abandoned her, and she still goes to therapy for it. So she is not the friendliest person in the world. I tried for a while to understand her, and try to have at least a civil relationship, but it didn't work, so I gave up after the first year. Her mother is a good person, and has apologized several times for her daughter's behavior, begging me not to hold a grudge against her, and I have tried to do so despite everything. Just to give you an idea, my stepsister has abandonment syndrome, diagnosed by her therapist, and is very clingy with her mother, my father, and her boyfriend. My father believes that her hateful behavior towards me is because she sees me as some kind of obstacle that can take my father away from her at any time. He has tried to mediate the situation, talk to her, and have some conversations with her therapist too about it, and we have actually made some progress over the years. Now she is no longer openly against me, and we can even have casual conversations without her giving me the cold shoulder or aggressive responses. However, she still tries to do some spite, even if subtly, to keep my father's attention only on her. I have my job who took away a lot of my time, so I can't really spend much time with my dad, and we mostly talk through calls and texts. But apparently, she has had a meltdown in the past when she saw him reply to a text from me while he was with her. I admit that it's something that bothers me. I can't help it. But luckily my father is able to manage things by giving her the security that he won't abandon her without reducing his time for me. The problem is now, my fiancé and I have decided on a wedding date for the end of May. We told our close relatives 2 weeks ago, and we will soon start making official invitations and sending them to everyone. 2 days ago, while I was at my dad's house and we were talking about when to make the appointment to go look at the wedding dress, I will bring my dad, my mom, my grandma, and my best friend, so I am trying to find a day that works for everyone. My stepsister butts into the conversation, telling my dad that she is planning on taking a family trip with him and her mom. My father was a little taken aback by that request in the middle of another conversation, and simply said that it was fine with him and that they would organize it later, but she immediately said that she had already thought about where to go and when. Apparently, she wants to go to Thailand at the end of May. Yes, the very week that I am supposed to get married. I got annoyed, but I didn't say anything. It was my father who managed the conversation and told her that she had to choose another date because he had to attend my wedding that week. Let's be clear. I also invited her and her mother. I didn't leave them out, and her mother also seemed happy to have been included. Well, the conversation escalated quickly, and she started having an emotional breakdown, accusing my dad of playing favorites, that he didn't love her, that he was leaving her behind, and other things like that. My dad was calm and firm the whole time, explaining to her that she couldn't make such a demand, and expect him to agree, so she started lashing out at me, when she yelled at me, "Why does he always have to choose you?" I lost my temper and replied, "Of course he chooses me. I'm his daughter. Who the hell are you?" She froze, shocked, and then ran to her room to cry. Well, I felt a bit bad right after I said that because I know her problems, but I can't deny that her behavior really bothered me. I mean, what did she expect? That my father would skip his own daughter's wedding to go on vacation with her? A vacation that we all know she wanted to take the week of my wedding on purpose? My father was also a bit upset by my words, and I apologized to him, telling him that I felt sorry for her and her problems. But I had tolerated her behavior for so long that this was the last straw. He said he understood me and would try to work things out with her, but it was clear that I had hurt him too with my words. I admit I was harsh, but I don't feel guilty for saying it to her. It was the truth after all. But should I have had more consideration for her, letting my dad solve the problem without saying anything? When I think about my father's eyes full of pain, I feel really a jerk. OP is not the AH for clarifying to her stepsister that she was just her stepsister. However, OP's response was a little harsh, and she could have handled the situation better. So, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's stepsister, I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale for manipulating OP's father and trying to sabotage OP's wedding by scheduling a foreign trip in the week when OP was getting married. Let's now jump on to the next story from Wolfbite 4444. AITA. Stepmom comments on food portions and shames us, so I spoke up at Thanksgiving. I, 35F, thought I set a healthy boundary on Thanksgiving with my stepmom, 59F. But I am starting to feel like an AH and I would like some input, because if I am the AH, I want to hold myself accountable. I need to provide a little background here for people to understand the situation. My stepmom has been around since I was 5-ish, and she has a daughter that is 2 years younger than me. Stepmom had an eating disorder that was so bad, it caused her heart problems and all sorts of health problems. She is no longer bulimic, but still has an unhealthy relationship with food. I remember when we were teenagers, my stepmom was calling herself fat because she could no longer fit into a size 0 anymore. This led to my younger sister crying because my sister wore a size 3, and that must mean she is fat too. My sister and I grew up hating our bodies and feeling extremely insecure. Stepmom would only give me backhanded compliments like, "Ugh, I hate you. You are so pretty. Just get out of my house. We can't have someone that pretty here." and I would always just sort of laugh it off and roll my eyes. She has said this exact same thing to me since my teenage years and still does it in my 30s. My sister now has 3 children, and she has told her mother that she is not to comment on body image, food portions, or anything negative about herself in front of the children or to the children. Stepmom still makes comments under her breath like, "Wow, that's a lot of food," or "Are you sure you can even eat all that?" or just looks at someone's plate with judgment in her eyes. 2 weekends ago, the youngest child ate all of her chicken and veggies and went to the kitchen where her mom was doing the dishes. She asked her mom for more mac and cheese, and her mom served her 2 scoops. When the child came back to the table, she said, "Oh my God, insert name," while looking at the child's plate. This pissed me off. Nobody heard her but me and the other children, because the guys were watching the football game. Fast forward to Thanksgiving. My sister and her kids were out of town. Lucky them. It was my dad, stepmom's sister, my boyfriend, and a family friend. Her sister got up to get a second serving, and when she did, stepmom said, "OMG, insert name." I could no longer bite my tongue, especially because I had a glass of wine before dinner. So, I spoke up and said, "You know, Dash, when you make comments about how much other people are eating or their portion sizes, it can be very hurtful and comes across very rudely. You did it to Dash last weekend, and you have done it to other family members in the past. Please stop making those comments because it can be damaging, especially to the children." She didn't say a word, and my dad quickly changed the subject. We moved on and enjoyed the rest of the night. I thought a boundary had been established and she would stop with her BS, since she was called out and aware of it now. Boy, was I wrong. Yesterday, I received a call from stepmom while my dad wasn't home with her. I answered the call, not thinking anything of it, and she proceeded to tell me how rude and uncalled for it was for me to call her out in front of everyone, that I owe her the respect of speaking to her privately if I have an issue, that I should not have ruined Thanksgiving with my unnecessary reaction to what she said. She then proceeded to tell me she never makes comments about people's food. I told her that is not true. She had done it the other day to her granddaughter, and has done it countless times to other family members. She then claimed, "When I say, 'Oh my God,' I just mean like, oh my God. They must love the food so much that they are going back for seconds, and I take it as the ultimate compliment. You are wrong. You shouldn't have said anything." This pissed me off. To full-on deny it and then twist it around on me? So I responded, "No, you aren't insinuating that with your comments and tones. You make these comments probably not realizing how it comes across." I politely responded to what you said, pointing out that it's rude and hurtful. You said it in front of everyone, as you always do, so I responded to it in front of everyone. Maybe you don't realize how damaging it is, but your past comments gave sister and me a lot of body image issues, and we're not going to sit here and allow you to pass that on to sister's kids. She was silent. Then she started crying. With my history, I would never do that. Is this an emotional manipulation tactic? IDK. But I said, "Listen, I won't apologize for establishing a healthy boundary and calling someone out on their unhealthy behavior. Maybe it was the wrong time, wrong place, but I am so tired of biting my tongue and being a doormat to avoid one of your emotional outbursts." Another point for history, when you try to point something out or correct her on something, she will throw up her hands, cause a fit, say something like, "Well, I guess I'm just an idiot," or something to that effect, and storm off and hide in a bedroom. She doesn't have the ability or maturity to regulate her own emotions. Everyone walks on eggshells around her, and we always have. Everyone got used to not speaking up for themselves to avoid the drama. After I mentioned trying to avoid one of her emotional outbursts, she responded saying, "I have been working so hard on not going off and overreacting. I am trying. You should have pulled me aside and said something." I wanted to end the conversation right then and there, so I said, "Maybe it was the wrong time, wrong place, but my intent was to bring attention to this behavior, and I wanted witnesses around us, so my words couldn't be misconstrued and turned against me. But I stand by what I said. I have a busy day, and I am trying to get out the door. If you want to talk to sister about this further, and get your daughter's input on how this has affected us all in the past, feel free to." And I hung up the phone. It felt good to stand my ground, but now I have feelings of guilt. My sister is sticking up for me. Her mom hasn't called her yet, but my sister thanked me for sticking up for everyone. When her mom calls and asks, Did I/do I do this? Sister is planning on being honest and calling her out and giving her examples from the past. Even so, I feel guilty. I feel like an AH. I feel like I should keep the peace and bite my tongue and just continue to walk on eggshells. I don't want to cause drama. I want to continue to see my dad regularly without the awkwardness of his wife. Was I rude to call it out right then and there? Do I feel guilty because I am not used to setting healthy boundaries with family? AITA. OP is not an AH for addressing a long-standing issue of her stepmom's behavior that always crosses boundaries. However, addressing it publicly might seem a little bit off. Whatever, OP did nothing wrong. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's stepmom 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale.